is March 8th. Sure. Good morning. It's Friday, February 9th. This is a special meeting of the Darien Board of Education Policy Committee. Our next meeting is March 8th. And Marge, I'll turn it right over to you to get us started.
So this is a second reading for most of the policies except 9180s. Sudden cardiac arrest, those are technical changes. Should have the red line copy, although we did have some issues with redlining coming through. 5275 Title IX. Again, at the end of that policy, there are some forms for student versus student sexual harassment. That's new. Policy 5300, student use of the district's computer system. We did check with Shipman and Goodwin. There was no actual change in the law to remove cartoon from the definition, but Shipman and Goodwin reviewed the law again, which did not include cartoon, and decided to remove it from the model policy. Rules of board members. 9110 has been changed. I don't know. Do you want me to go through all of them since we've?
Do you stop and like
Yeah.
certain groupings?
Yes.
That's okay.
Do we want to stop on that last one, Marge, on 5300?
Sure, yeah.
Does that work? People have questions. Just to clarify, Marge, so you were saying that Shipman removed cartoon to have their model policy be more in line with the language
The
from
language
the
of the
state
statute,
statute. Okay. So there had been questions on that. Go ahead.
So my question is, do you just want to do like 4430? Does anybody have any comments?
Sure. Sorry.
And I'm not on, but
That's fine.
I'd like to bang out some that,
Some of the easier ones.
yes.
So on 4430, sudden cardiac arrest awareness for intramural and interscholastic athletics. I had a typo, Marge, that I didn't catch the first time. Exciting stuff, I know. But in the first paragraph, the second to last line has an extra that.
Does.
I did not have anything else on that one.
I don't.
Looks like the rest of us are good. Okay. So next up is
The Title IX 5275.
5275, policy regarding Title IX. Do we have questions or comments there?
Nope.
Nope.
So there's actually, Marge, a typo in your phone number on page 8 of the packet.
That was intentional.
It's in there correct later. Just a heads up. Okay, if we're good there, otherwise, we'll move
Yeah.
on to 5300, policy regarding student use of the district's computer systems and internet safety. John?
So I understand, I mean, I pulled up the state statute. It matches exactly now without the word cartoon. I guess my one question was, as now described by state statute and policy, would a cartoon be considered a picture as defined? So it's covered. Okay,
Right.
got it.
So something like a graphic novel or something that you might colloquially or whatever in conversation refer to as a cartoon would be covered by the language that's in there.
Right. There would still need to be a determination about whether it was pornographic or obscene, but it would be covered.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, just calling it out, it's pretty interesting what the threshold is based on state statute on what is pornographic and obscene. I mean, there's 3 standards in which you have to meet, so.
Well, and
What-
we learned yesterday that there's an exemption for educational institutions. So if it's not pornographic if it's distributed by an educational institution.
For educational purposes.
For educational
Right,
purposes.
if it
sorry.
has educational merit, but there is a
Pretty wild.
So Grey's Anatomy is not going to be
right.
determined pornographic.
Yep.
And just a quick question, point of information, John. Why are we carrying what's in the state statute?
Because we have to follow state statute as a board, correct?
But why does the language have to match exactly?
I didn't say it has to. I just
You
said,
just did. You said this did, and that
You
was
said
like an
it,
important.
I think his point was it does, our policy matches state statute. If you want to change that, we can discuss that.
Well, that's Shipman's recommendation.
Right, but I mean, state policy is like, we understand this is kind of like a pyramid going down. We have the state statute, constitution's really vague. Then we have state laws that get a little more specific, and then our policies can be whatever we want. Like,
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
have to match.
I put the town charter in there too, and then our policies.
Yeah, right. So we're getting more prescriptive and more precise as we drill down to the levels.
When we choose to,
Yeah.
right? We
Right,
don't
okay.
necessarily have to, but that's certainly
Yeah,
an option
I mean,
available.
I don't think we know things that conflict, but we don't have to follow the letter of what's in a statute.
If I said that, let me know.
No, I just want to make sure I understand what we're doing.
No, I think we're good. I think
Good.
we're
Thanks.
Thank you.
good. Okay.
All I'm saying is we're very safe starting at the state statute level. And if we want to get more prescriptive, absolutely.
Right. Okay. Any more on 5,300?
Not for me.
Okay, great. So that takes us to 9110. Role of board and members. Anyone has?
So the changes have been redlined so that you can see, again, this was done to track the statutory language, these changes
Dave?
Where'd the red line come from?
from Shipman and Goodwin's model policy.
Dave, okay, thank you.
John or Sarah, any questions?
Yeah, one on this one. Actually, can we put it on the wall and frame it for our board meetings? No, I'm joking.
Wait, I'm looking around.
No, my real question is, 2C, to consider revise is redlined out, adopt an annual budget. So I'm just wondering why that word revise, because I feel like we do revise.
Would we have to revise though? I mean, if we were, 100% in agreement with what the superintendent presented?
But we're probably not obligated to
Right.
revise, I guess is what you're
Right.
saying.
Well, also, I don't know that you can revise once it's adopted. You can make budget transfers. And it's possible that that's what they were.
Well,
I'd note that the opening sentence says including but not limited to, so really this list is superfluous.
sorry, what does that mean?
It means including but not limited, and then there's a bunch of things. So not limited to, you can do whatever you want that's not one of these things.
Okay, cool.
So what's the point of
Okay.
what are these things?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I can check if you'd like to add back revise.
I don't consider is
I
good
think,
enough for
yeah.
me. I just wonder what was that. That's fine. Thanks.
And then my only question was 2J, to establish a curriculum committee. That's the district curriculum committee or is that the subcommittee? Just so we're all clear what that.
Oh,
talks
that's
to.
a good point.
So this is the
This is-
statutory language, which I think that you've been through that conversation, that it can either be a committee or the board as a whole.
Right. And we have both
Yeah.
presently. We have a board committee and we have a administrative curriculum committee.
Right.
So can we better define what
That-
Should
curriculum,
we
board curriculum?
specify that?
I don't know how you would, I mean,
Well, the other one is really the district leadership team,
Well,
by definition of.
Your mic's on.
it is on.
Oh, you're getting close.
I think what we're talking about here is that the curriculum committee being this committee. I think, right, and then the district leadership team is the other committee that the board has given over some decision to.
Okay.
So the statute just requires that you establish a committee. It doesn't specify what. So if you wanted to be more specific,
Why don't we call it the board curriculum committee?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, because this is what we're 2.5 years into that
Right.
committee, so
Yeah.
I'm just future thinking, I think it will always be here, at least in my time, but what if it's not? Like, do we need to?
Well, the way it used to work was the board curriculum committee was the board itself, right?
True.
So I
Right.
would just suggest
Just
adding the word board.
Board, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Dave, you good?
Yeah, I mean, I think on this, it's not limited, so you can do whatever. And, Alan, to your point about the staff level curriculum committee, I'm not sure that's a requirement, just simply speaks to the board at statute. So if we want to say that we should have staff having a curriculum committee, I think that would be something we might want to consider, but it sure doesn't seem to be a requirement.
Okay.
So I would love to check with Shipman and Goodman for two things. First of all, is it a board curriculum subcommittee? And then should that
Right.
be in the policy on subcommittees if you want to make that a standing
Right.
committee? So if it's all right, I'll just check with.
Okay.
her
Yeah,
that's great.
stylist.
I have to say the interesting question there, Marge, is it says the board has to have a committee. The way we do subcommittees and subcommittees just kind of talk and don't actually vote and approve anything. But then we are required to actually have a committee. What are the obligations of that committee? Does that committee have to be empowered to actually take action? As ours is not currently constituted to do. So are we actually meeting the obligation as construed? I'm not really sure.
So it may just be a terminology thing that we have to sort out here, because in policy 6210, if I can find it here real quickly.
I guess the further thought on that is it says you have to have a committee. It doesn't say it has to be effective or actually do anything. So
So it says to that end, the Board of Education hereby establishes the district curriculum leadership team, which shall serve as the board's school district curriculum committee. So we'll have to sort of like just play out terminology. I guess,
Please.
Right?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yes. It's already caused confusion over
No,
the years.
better now.
Right, better to clear it up. So is that clear, Marge? You know what you want
I
to
know what to
check on?
ask,
Okay.
but we'll bring that back here before. board.
Well, that'll come back to the committee before it
Yeah.
goes back to the
That's
board.
please.
Excellent. So next up is 9120.
So those are basically stylistic, but it does have some clarifying language about subcommittees.
So that's transaction of business.
Right, sorry.
Um,
I just have one quick comment. The word bylaws. Shouldn't that be policies? It's in number, letter B.
We should probably go through and take a look because I think the two are used
Yeah,
interchangeably.
I thought we'd been cleaning up
Yes.
bylaws as we come across it, but yeah.
Um, I think that's, if that's all we have on 9120, I think we're probably okay to, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Just quick, where'd the red line come from on this?
This is all against Shipman's model policies.
Okay.
Okay,
We could probably move that one forward with the change from bylaws. to
I'm comfortable with
policy.
that.
The oath of office, there are no recommended changes, so it's just there for your information.
Everybody good? Short and sweet?
So conflict of
Oh, sorry.
interest, 9140, this is redlined against Shipman's model policy, which does not have either paragraphs 1, 2, or 3. Which doesn't mean that we spoke to Jessica, we couldn't add back. But she was suggesting that we should track the town charter languages, which is if you have pecuniary interests, you just you announce it and recuse yourself. It doesn't mean that the board can't do business or you have to resign.
And in the memo, Marge included the relevant
Yes.
information from the town charter.
Charter.
Would you want, I guess the only change then, if we adopt these changes, could you put the town charter in the legal reference?
Hmm.
But we still need to discuss the final paragraph
Right.
about hiring
Mm-hmm.
people related to either the superintendent or board members. Jessica's feeling is that this is quite prescriptive and that there may be times when you want to hire people, so.
I think the direction we were headed in our last discussion, not that we can't change that, but that kind of vague and something that gives us room to maneuver was more where we wanted to go with that, but I open it up to
Yeah, I
any,
mean, I think we talked through a couple of what ifs, and I think at least my understanding is that we were gonna leave it vague to not have an absolute, this can't happen.
right.
Do we want to specify that with language, or do we just want to not have anything included
Not
as it is in
included.
here? What Jessica's suggestion was to not have
So-
anything in
So
there?
their model.
Their policy leaves it out.
Because the only statutory requirement is that board members can't be compensated by the district.
I'm okay with leaving it out, but I'm open to
Yeah.
certainly hearing from others.
kind of struggling a little in that. I wouldn't want nepotism, but I'm trying to come up with an example, but then again, if they're qualified, they would be
Exactly.
higher.
And if it's the
than-
best candidate, like,
I mean,
you know,
I'm-
Dr. Ali was saying his wife worked in nursing and like, I don't want to,
I mean, I just had a real life experience where the dean of the Clemson Veterinary School came in with a package as his wife, and she's a professor, and so, if they're qualified, it can be.
So Shipman and Goodwin does have a nepotism model policy for staff. We will bring it forward, but we have a lot of staff that are related to each other. So
Yeah.
I want to figure out how we don't blow everything up, with their model policy. Their model policy basically says you can't supervise somebody who you're related to in a certain way.
So there would be another policy that would cover any
That would cover
nepotism?
person.
Oh, okay, then.
so
if
maybe
that's
we
it,
do that. Maybe
Yeah.
that's a way to.
Do we want to
So
see?
Maybe we want to hold this and add a look at the
So I
nepotism.
could bring the nepotism
policy?
Yeah.
Let's do that. So we feel covered. Anything else from you, Dave? on that?
Yeah, I'm just like this, no member shall be employed in the addition of for compensation. Not sure you're generally employed without compensation, and I'm not sure how broad compensation is. I don't know if that would read in any Thanksgiving Day football tickets, so I'm not sure we need to actually have that inclusion.
I'm trying to find that line.
Where's that? Sorry.
7, struck out 7, I guess.
Right, yeah.
Oh, for compensation.
Yeah,
Do you want to
Okay.
strike the for compensation?
I think that's reasonable.
Let me, as long as we're bringing this back, let me ask Jessica if
Yeah.
there's a reason. But you're right. Otherwise, you're a volunteer,
Mhm.
right?
Okay. So we will see this again. 9140, and then we are on to 9150. Qualifications for board members, and the reco is to repeal.
It's covered by state statute and the town charter, so.
Okay.
Anybody have anything?
I'm fine to leave this in. I don't see why it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of harmless, right? I mean, and the intent is number 2, like your intent, you want people that want to be here for the right reasons.
Well, this number 2, Jessica would definitely recommend striking because it's hard.
It's hard to enforce. Yeah.
It's aspirational for sure, and you would get at that, through elections, I think.
I mean, number 2, I think is way too subjective and personal, but I would leave number 1. Would you? You agree?
no, I'd keep it all in there.
You keep it all in.
Yeah, I would.
Because you like the spirit of it, essentially.
Yeah.
That's fair. And Shipman and Goodwin would not want us to keep that language in there.
I suppose in the craziest situation, someone would say, you've been elected and you don't have a genuine interest in and devotion, so you violated your policy.
Right, or you
In the
don't work
craziest
cooperatively.
Scenario, yeah.
It seems more like it would be in our marketing materials. Join the Board of Education, be with a great group of people who have a
Yeah.
genuine interest in and devotion to public education.
So
Yeah,
attorneys protect you from the craziest.
right. Yes, I think I'm comfortable with losing 2 myself. While I
Yeah.
like the language
I'm going to stick with my original.
to
Remove.
remove 2 but keep it with .1. Sarah?
I mean, I agree with Dave. I like the spirit of it, but I see the point that it's more of a marketing paragraph than not. I
It's got to go to the board anyway, so.
Yep.
I'm fine with losing it. It's fine.
Not not
So
my.
I'll send it to the board with that redlined and then. you
Yeah.
can
And we'll
have
discuss it
discussion.
at that table.
Well,
Thank
all
you.
these are going to the board, right?
Pardon?
Yeah.
Yes, of course, yes.
For what
Thank
it's
you.
worth, I kind of like it, but that's, that's.
Because we are those people.
Right.
Okay, so 9160, filling vacancies on the board. And
You want to describe this one, Marge?
Right, so this one also is redlined to track Shipman's model policy. There was a question last time about what happens if an unaffiliated member, and it turns out that that's quite complicated. Julie and I spoke to Jessica and another partner at Shipman. If we want to cover that possibility, they will draft language that says something like, if an unaffiliated member resigns, the board will comply with all applicable rules, laws, and regulations in replacing, because it's different if you are elected as an unaffiliated or if you are elected as a member of a party and then decide to become an independent, unaffiliated, because
Unaffiliated,
independent is actually a
independent's
party,
different.
we learned.
Let's
what to,
Let's
Add that
pursue that,
language, yeah.
definitely. This clearly is not going to go forward anyway to the board already, I think, so give us more time.
yes, it's a very, and then it comes down to scenarios as far as protecting for minority representation.
Yeah.
So it gets very complicated.
Yeah.
Are you going to read us in on any of that at some point?
I'm sorry.
What, the conversation you have with Shipman and how it's complicated, are we going to get further details to that information or the scenarios?
So it's a different scenario if the person is elected as an unaffiliated voter or if it's elected as, say, a Democrat and then decides to. So I don't know, their advice is not to cover every possibility, but just say in the policy, but just that you would comply with applicable law.
But I was just wondering for our edification
Oh,
here,
sure.
could you explain a couple of these scenario or, I don't need every detail, just generally how they work? Would be
Sure.
helpful.
We'll do that when we bring back, we
Okay.
caught a partner sort of on the run who gave us this initial advice, so we'll get some more
Okay.
clarity.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, other questions on this particular?
I had a few, so I think the 30-day window so there's, I have this, sorry, give me a second. Also, I came across I should have sent this around, but I didn't get a chance, but like a memo or a brief on, so you need a new board member, legal concerns when filling vacancies. It was written in 2016, but still think it's applicable. So again, sorry.
Who's that from?
Mark J. Samagra,
Oh.
Pullman and Comley, but I'll
In
send you guys all the
In
link.
Connecticut.
Yeah.
Pullman is a big firm
Yeah.
in school law.
So I'll get this around. I thought it was really helpful because they do go through some scenarios. But I guess the first question I had is the 30-day window. And it then the 30-day window refers back to Connecticut's General Statute 7-107, which if any vacancy comes across any town board or commission and the board or commission has a power by law to fill such vacancy, but fails to do so within the 30 days, the Board of Selectmen or Chief Executive Authority of such town may appoint a qualified person. So that was one of my questions. And I think the reason I'm going here is there's other language in this policy that created a little mayhem
Mhm.
that I want to review and hopefully remove in that next board meeting. Given that we do have a 30-day window by statute, I felt like there's a little ambiguity in how to apply that policy of only next meeting or next special meeting.
Yeah.
So I'd love to kind of explore the idea of changing the policy so we get a greater time window to work with in the board and outside with any partners, especially given what we're hearing about an unaffiliated and how complexity can play a role there. So
When does that 30-day clock start? Is it when an email hits the board chairs?
It's when the vacancy
Months or-
occurs. So if I submit a letter of resignation that says I tender my resignation effective March 15th, the 30-day window starts on March 15th, not today.
But
Okay.
if it says immediately,
Then it starts immediately.
this is one where I think we can be more prescriptive than state statute.
So the current
And town
language,
charter.
I'm sorry, John. I didn't mean
And
to
sorry,
cut you
I
off.
jumped. And town charter,
The current language says we'll schedule the election of a replacement at the next regular board meeting or at a special meeting convened for such purpose. So that's scheduling the election of the replacement, not actually holding it.
It
It was,
It's too
it was
ambiguous.
interpreted
Yes.
to mean, it is what you're
It might
saying.
have been, and it may be in other instances in the future. I'm not solely relying on experience.
So would you be asking to consider language that speaks to the 30-day window versus when the next meeting does,
maybe-
or,
To your point, maybe at a meeting scheduled within the next 30 days, 30 days after the resignation or something like that.
okay. Could we look at, ask
Yeah.
about language like that?
I think the only, and this is just a procedural issue, not a legal one, is that one of your other questions was what happens if there's a 4-4 tie? And Jessica reviewed Robert's rules, which would say that you just keep voting until you work something out. So how close to the 30-day window would you want to be
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
if you had to keep voting?
I'm sorry, the question on the Roberts rules and what happens if you have a tie?
So if you're 4-4 on the Board of Ed and you need to elect a
A ninth member.
ninth, thank you, a ninth member.
But our council had a thought on that? Who asked the council to do that work and come back with an opinion?
I asked Marge a question, what happens if it's a
If there's a
4-4 tie?
I see. So we have policy members getting advice from council. Cool.
I'm sorry?
No, we have policy members can get access to council. That's good to know. It's a helpful
I
thing.
have access to council, I'm
It was
sorry.
just a question, I thought a clarifying question, whether
Um,
there should be language in the policy.
and it is possible that we can go into exec session while working through this process if we're looking to fill a vacancy. But yes, we would just continue to hold the vote and see if we could get somewhere else. And if we run out of time, then the person gets appointed by the town.
We can ask Shipman to give you the most flexibility in when you schedule the meeting and still preserve as much time as possible for the 30 days. That,
Or I guess, is the question to Shipman, does the policy need to prescribe when we have the meeting? Or does it just need to say you need to have this all wrapped up within 30 days or else the
Yes.
town will appoint
That's
someone?
kind of the
I
direction.
think that's
I'd
where
like to go.
you
I
headed.
mean, can we just say this, the new member needs to be elected by the Board of Education within 30 days of resignation?
Of vacancy occurring,
Yeah.
yep. Or else the town will
Right.
appoint. Dave?
Yeah, and to that point, I see the strikeout of special meeting. I thought the way this was drafted previously with regular meeting and special meeting was to give every opportunity where the board is actually meeting to address this within that 30-day window. So I don't understand that strikeout
The strikeout of.
in the second paragraph, middle of the
Yep.
body of it. So I mean, I think whether it's special or regular, I think we need to get on it quickly within that 30-day window. So I don't understand why we're,
So leaving it as a special meeting option. is-
yeah, whatever
yes.
happens,
so
we
the
need to get at
special
it.
meeting is still, this is just stylistic with Shipman and Goodwin. It was stricken from our paragraph 2, but it's still in paragraph 3. We'll schedule the election at the next regular meeting or at a special meeting. It's-
Paragraph 2 is about receiving
Oh,
the
right.
resignation, not
Yeah.
about
Okay.
handling it.
Sorry, it gets confusing.
Oh, yeah,
with
that,
the
then
style.
that makes sense.
And then the written in paragraph 2, just since we're on that, I don't understand the inclusion of written. I'm not sure I have a letter that's not written. We're not, it's a letter, so this isn't going to be communicated orally.
Right.
If
Yeah.
it's going to be
Yeah.
written, can that form of writing be an email, electronic? I mean, I don't get why we're adding that line.
That's fair. We can ask about that. Did we want to talk further about the town clerk piece? That was a discussion item last meeting. Dave?
Yeah, I don't understand the reason for the strikeout. Do we have any information or color on that, Marge?
Yeah, there's no requirement in either state law or the town charter that the town clerk be notified. It doesn't have any impact on when the time frame starts. The town clerk will know there's a vacancy when they swear in the new person. I guess it's the feeling. And that requiring notice to the town clerk is just another way for you to violate something that's not a legal requirement.
Yeah, again, this seems to me like a situation where we might want to go a little bit further. I don't see what harm it does. And I think in terms of if we had an election or somebody has to be on the ballot or what's going to happen there, it seems to me just an official notice. And maybe it is a formality and it's not required by statute, but we have every right to do something more prescriptive and for not removing it.
So,
We did discuss perhaps having the board chair be the one to notify rather than the
and the individual.
That's what I was
individual
gonna
who's
suggest,
resigning.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that because the board, as statutes, well, let me back it up. What's the question? Is it, when does the resignation become official? the notification, but notification to who? Does the statute or town charter say board chair?
It just says, it doesn't really say anything. It just says when, so it can go to anyone, but it doesn't have to go to the town clerk.
Okay.
It could be an email to the whole board.
So,
There's-
but I think it makes sense that since the board has a statutory authority to make the decision that the notification goes to the board chair, and then to Dave's point, perhaps we could add language and the board chair shall notify the town clerk
Yeah.
of such resignation.
That makes sense to
Does
me.
that make sense, Dave?
I mean, I think it should come from the party that's resigning. I don't imagine that the chair is gonna, I don't think our chair is gonna put him a letter to the town clerk that I resigned today, but I think it should come from the party directly. It just seems to make sense.
I don't necessarily understand the magic of the town clerks being informed. If there's something I'm missing, maybe it would help.
And maybe it's not the town clerk, maybe it's the registrar or somebody, but I think the town clerk would be the right party, not the registrar. But I think at some point, we need to give notice of whatever can happen or needs to happen, whether they're given an election cycle or given where we are in that replacement. And plus the clerk's the one who does the swearing in for each of us. So that would seem to be the right party. So, let you
There's
know
no
you're
swearing out.
Well, but I mean, the person swears you in would be the person you let know you're going. So
Okay, so someone outside of the 9 of us, for example, being informed as part of the process is what you're,
Yeah, I think. And again, the town clerk, to that point, like, that's the swearing in with them. So I think they should be on notice when you're leaving. Seems reasonable as opposed to anybody else versus say the selectman or registrar.
would we consider, or is it worth asking about having language that says the board shall inform? Or do we need to specify the board chair? Because the board doesn't do
ask.
anything outside of a public meeting.
Right.
Sorry, I'm thinking through that as I speak it.
Right, so you need board action.
Yeah,
Right, for the board to notify.
which is not what we do.
Yeah, again, to the joke earlier, I mean, I don't think the chair is going to do something unfaithfully, or if I gave a resignation, they're not going to like pass it on, like, but it just seems
Okay.
just to avoid any of those situations, which probably won't happen, but just to make sure, I think having it bilateral between the parties makes a lot of sense.
Um,
I'm still missing is what the difference between the town clerk and the board chair is, but we'll hear and we'll discuss. it
Right, and we're
further.
not taking this forward to the full board, so we have time to ask about this and think about this some more. And this may still end up being something that we discuss, obviously, with the full board, but so do you feel like you have information to request on that, Marge?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
I think there was one more question about consulting with the appropriate town committee and whether we were required. And what Julie and I learned yesterday is that the board actually the board can't consult with any of the political parties because the board can only act at a meeting. So a meeting that's been noticed and whatever. So if we want to say that the board or some part of the board is going to consult, we would need to change the language to say that the board chair but then I guess Jessica was nervous about also a seriatim meeting too. If the board chair consults with the head of the whatever town committee and then starts emailing other board members, you've potentially violated the Freedom of Information Act.
I'm fine removing this line.
And there's no language to that effect in the town charter or the state statute, but removing it does not preclude a member of the board from consulting with a town
Or
committee.
the town committee saying, here's who we
Right.
recommend.
I'm agnostic. I mean, the may language, if you look up the term may as it's considered legally, it's can or cannot happen. I'm fine with leaving it in there. It just differs from the town charter, it differs from state statute, but it's a little more prescriptive in that you may do something. So
I just think, when we're talking about all those unaffiliated people, they don't have a town committee. So if that ever comes to
Right.
pass,
Right. So that does bring us back to the you thing. And again, the tricky thing about the unaffiliated is the only thing that unites unaffiliated is the fact that they're not affiliated with a party, right? They have chosen to not affiliate. It doesn't mean that they're bound by anything else.
but just to be clear, minority representation roles are set by the town.
Right.
And in some cases, you, by statute, you may appoint somebody different than what they were registered. So I'll do it, let's just say the Republicans were in the minority and a U resigned, you could, by state statute, as I understand it, appoint an R.
Provided that you have minority representation intact.
Yeah. So,
that change.
so that's why I'm kind of, even with the U complexity, biased to leave this language in as long as the word may remains.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that, Dave?
Yeah, I'd leave it in. I think the way we did the last election was not really consistent with this when it was our policy. I realize may is not language of obligation, but I mean, it's more than precatory, but
More than, I'm sorry.
precatory.
I'm sorry, I don't know what
A
that word
wish.
is.
Yeah,
Thanks.
somewhere in between. Yeah, I don't understand how this isn't something we should do that we've done for a number of years. I appreciate that it's not in the statute or in the town charter, but again, we can be more specific if we choose to. And I think that it's entirely appropriate that whether it's a DTC or RTC, that there should be a consultation, and whether the language of the board or the chair. I mean, we certainly have avenues and lanes of communication, but just to take somebody off the street randomly and plop them in here does not seem to be consistent with the way things should occur.
I think the way it's written, the may consult, like you can consult with them, but you don't have to agree with whatever they have to say. So that
Right, and I
it's
think-
still broad enough that it's fair.
And I think that's correct, because you may consult and they say, bring in X, and you bring in X and you interview them and you don't like them
Right.
as a whole board. Well, you consulted and that's fine. You move it on to somebody else. But you shouldn't just have a complete rando. You should have the opportunity to have that person presented who comes at the suggestion of one of the town committees.
I might argue that you're not necessarily a complete rando just because you weren't put forth by the town committee, but I don't think that's what you're saying.
Well, and I think it also doesn't preclude a rando from joining that interview process.
Yeah, I just don't think that's the way this is cognized, and I don't think that that's really appropriate. So the idea of removing a town committee, and again, to the affiliates, that's why I was asking earlier, Marge, because I knew we were coming to this conversation. What happens there? I think that'd be good to know for background as we consider this. But to your point, Julie, we do have affiliations, and we're all here as a result of various parties. We do try and work independent of that and without concerns for that, but that's how we all get here. We don't have any independence. And this idea that the town committee doesn't have a role in this process and isn't part of the representation of residents of Darien, just to me is wrong. And I think this language should remain.
As written with the may.
Could I just go back to Jessica about, I don't want to put you in the position of violating the Freedom of Information Act. So let's see whether she can craft some language that says someone on the board consults or whatever.
May
Yeah,
consult.
may consult. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I would think it would be the chair, not
Right.
a rando board member.
Right.
Yeah.
Would it be the chair if it weren't their town committee?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
because they represent the board.
Yeah. Okay. Just putting it out there. Okay.
I mean, the town committee has to act too. I mean, there are instances where the town committee, I mean, I sat on P and Z and we appointed somebody and didn't act.
Okay.
So,
All right. I'm just
so that
looking-
doesn't rely, again, to Dave's point, doesn't rely on either side.
Right. And we don't have the power to write into our policy what they will or won't do. Because
Correct.
they will do what they will or won't do.
I went and looked at the town committee policies. I'm not sure they have a policy within their own policies.
Mhm.
So.
Okay, anything else on 9160, which we will obviously look at again? Yes, Dave?
You just, yeah, so we're going to get further info and see
Yes,
again, is this
we
board?
will keep this in committee for another go round. So we are on to 91.
Can we just do the to-dos on this one? Because
Oh, sure.
Just because there was a number of them. So the
Yes.
unaffiliated language, clarification on, freedom of whether or not the may clause, if we.
How to include that
Yeah, how to
without
include that
getting
without
in hot water
FOI. And then the 30-day
versus scheduling
clause
of
and
meeting.
adding a clause that proscribes if we're not done in 30 days, it
Yes.
does go to.
I think specifying that 30-day and that.
Yeah.
And,
piece
and,
is-
and I'll get you guys this memo too.
So I also had about whether the notice of resignation needed to be written.
Oh, that's right.
Who it was addressed to, whether an email would suffice.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay.
I think, yeah, the question was specifically around the word written. If you're going
Yeah,
to say
yeah.
that it is communicated via letter,
Yeah,
we'll have to
'cause-
call it a written
I mean,
letter.
I can slap on a paragraph around the word written if we're going to have that in there. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we'll probe on that too. Royally. Okay, thank you. So 9170, removal of board officers.
So the only question that we received was, or that came up last time, was whether the chair of a subcommittee would be an officer of the board. Jessica suggests that when we get to the policies relating to committees, we deal with, if we want to deal with removal of a chair, we do it there.
But as written, Jessica's feeling was that this does not
Does not.
include a committee chairperson. This
So
is
the
for-
only officers are the chair, vice chair, and secretary.
Correct.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Just,
You gotcha?
I guess the last sentence. Why is that redlined? There's a cause for it should be made by a majority of more members present and voting.
Because I think it says it someplace else.
Okay.
Let me,
I didn't look at this one that closely, but I'm just.
Which last sentence? The very
The
end of the
very,
policy?
very, so standard for removal, yeah.
so in number 3 above, any action to remove or take disciplinary action shall require an affirmative vote by a majority of all members of the board.
Perfect, okay, thanks.
Okay, start.
So it's covered. Favor, Sarah, anyone? Okay, so are we good with moving this one forward to the full board? Great.
And 9180 is a Shipman and Goodwin model policy. Darien did not have a policy about code of conduct. So this is all new.
So what's the reasoning behind adding this? This seems like it's just, unnecessary.
Yeah, it's pretty subjective as drafted. And again, I don't know what the point is.
So sometimes Shipman and Goodwin does things for legal reasons, and sometimes it's because other districts have had issues, and so they develop policy. So I can ask if you want to bring this back, what the reason.
I'm not feeling great about this one, but yeah, that'd be great if you could.
Find out the why.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys need to clarify what disciplinary action is. I'm not aware of the removal of an officer, what any disciplinary action is.
Beyond censure,
Yeah,
right?
that was my question.
So Tom's book, which Jessica agreed with, is that they caution strongly against any other disciplinary action. So I'm not really sure why the language is still there, but censure is really the only thing that's open.
But where does censure come from? Because it's only officer removal, I think, in the statute that I looked at. I didn't see censure as a form of
So
admonishment.
board
or-
members, the board doesn't have any right to remove a board member from office, so you can censure,
Right,
but
but
I
there's-
can ask.
I don't know that there's attendant right to censure either.
Okay, I can check.
But I think we just don't enact this, so it doesn't really matter what the answer is there, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Let's just understand better why.
And when we have a problem, then we can enact it.
Yeah.
It just,
Seems like looking for a
this could be
problem.
used maliciously
Yeah,
and I
but-
have zero interest in participating in that.
All right. This will hold over and revisit at our next committee meeting. For sure.
So what are we moving forward through to the whole board?
I think 4430, 5275, 5,300. 9110, 9120.
No, 9110 is not going.
No,
I'm sorry, nope. Correct.
We need to confirm the curriculum committee question.
so 9120 was, I have checked off 91,
Yes,
9130.
9130.
checked off. 9140 stays,
Yep,
9150 goes to the board.
Right, with
That-
the
with
discussion.
with that
in
question
second
about the
paragraph.
second point. 9160 stays.
All right, stop checking after that.
That's okay. 9170
9170 goes.
is going to the full board
Yep.
and 9180 is staying in committee.
Right.
Does that jive with what everyone's?
7 of them.
Yep. So we'll do those
The first
Tuesday
read.
night.
Yeah,
Okay.
that good.
Yeah, we'll have those.
Anyone have anything else on these policies? If not, we'll open it up to public comment.
If
Michelle?
anyone in person or online wants to participate, please come up to the podium or use the raised hand icon. No raised hands on online.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. John, seconded by Sarah, all in favor. I think we're adjourned. Thanks,